The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in the podcast belong solely to the hosts and not the host's past, present, or future employers. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It's Brian, just Brian this week for Breaking Down Security. Ms. Berlin, Mr. Betcher have client meetings. I am lucky enough to have no meeting Friday at my office, so I'm taking a little time here before I actually go to work to interview somebody this week. This person actually was a conference organizer at hardware.io that reached out and said, "Hey, would you like to talk to this person?" I was like, "Yes," because it reminds me of some of my early days of when I was trying to be a hacker, failing miserably. But this is a very interesting topic, something that has been around for years, and I'm just going to go ahead and bring him on here. We'll introduce Sébastien Dudek to the show.
Hello.
All right. So, Sébastien, thank you for coming on. I understand that you're actually between labs right now. You're actually teaching a classroom full of people on how to do SDR and SDR hacking, and we're gonna do our best to get you out of here before the lab ends. Which you're in between labs right now, which I find interesting. Yes. That's never happened to us in 6 years, where somebody's actually doing something else at the same time. So, Sébastien, can you tell people about yourself, how you got to be where you're at right now, and what do you do for a living?
So actually, we are in a situation in France that now we have to stay at home, a lot of people. But we are actually in a lockdown, the lockdown version 2. So, but actually, I have also my own company that is located in my home. So it doesn't change anything for me. So I'm actually doing some trainings from home, but also some missions. I'm also working for the Trend Micro company, also in full time. So I'm working, a lot on about radio communication systems, hardware, and also IoT stuff and industrial IoT. So it's mainly that. And yeah, I mean, it was like. I was first working as a researcher in the radio communication system at Sogeti in the French company 10 years ago, and then I changed the company to do some pen testing stuff because I didn't know anything about pen tests. So I could for example, learn about how to pen test generic things like websites, network, and also Windows system that I never know. Then. After some years, I just look around and I saw that a lot of clients were asking also about securing the IoT systems. And I was like, okay, the problem is that IoT systems use a lot of radio. So as I have some knowledge in radio, why I should not create a project about that? So I wanted to include this project inside my ex company, which was Synacktiv at the time. And then after a year of negotiation, I was like, okay, I will maybe staying at Synacktiv. I will never do what I want. So I just I started my own company and starting the beginning of this year. So it was the perfect timing because also at the beginning of this year there was also the COVID situation, and so actually also now it's working pretty great. But yeah, if you need, for example, if you want to know how to create your company, doing doing your own company in such situation when you have some COVID stuff or something like that, you can also ask me. I can also do some training about that. So yeah, it's kind of everything. But yeah, I'm almost already now. I can listen to other questions you have.
Fantastic. Okay, so we're here today to talk about software-defined radio. A lot of organizations use it. I was, doing some research for preparing for the interview, and I found there are a lot of wireless implementations out there. When I started trying to dabble in software defined radio, and we talked about this for the podcast, I had a Linux 2.4 kernel, which tells you how old this was. It was a USB device. It captured analog over-the-air TV, but then you could buy an adapter for it, or an amplifier in this case, to allow you to do things like play around with the 2.4 gigahertz wireless B systems, and there was far less wireless space than everybody was trying to hack garage door openers. But just in a simple search of Google, there's a lot of systems now that use Wi-Fi or custom wireless implementations. What experience? What kind of systems are you seeing now that have these custom wireless implementations?
About custom Wi-Fi implementation, you can find it pretty everywhere. You have like some drones that use it, for example, a lot of drones that use it. Also there was like a good report. I don't remember the name of the company who does that, but they tested the communication of the DJI drones, and they just show that, for example, these drones were identified. There was like in the frame of the Wi-Fi, there was like an identification number that was used to control the drone actually. So this is, for example, some sort of things that you can, for example, with a Wi-Fi dongle, you can intercept some frames and also see what is going on. And actually, you just have to look at the frames, see if, for example, the frames are encrypted or not, if there are some payloads that don't have like a lot of entropy. You can probably guess what it is. And so, for example, with two drones, you can maybe like find an ID that is used in order to communicate with the drones, etc., or any other systems. So like that, you can also spot if our communication is encrypted or not. So everything depends. I think mainly when you do such test, for example, even in Wi-Fi, but even also with SDR systems. With an SDR, what you have to look is that first you capture. At least you have to have like two devices in order to see if there is like some association with the ID of the system, and like that you can also spot if the communication is encrypted or not. And sometimes also you can if like for example it used like some stream ciphers, you can for example try to maybe guess the key or some part of the key just based on, for example, some padding problems. So for example, if like is like no information, I mean some null bytes or something like such, you can try to maybe guess some part of the keys, and like that, so try to maybe brute force the keys that is used, for example, for the communication. So yeah, actually it's a lot of analysis. Radio is not like, a radio is can like other systems, like for example, trying to attack network systems. It's exactly the same, but it's not exactly the same channel. The canal, the canal. The interface of communication is not, for example, the Ethernet, like it is used, for example, for networks. Radio is more about interfacing with the system. And so this is the complicated stuff, because actually you don't have, like, for example, just an Ethernet cable to plug on it and try to sniff what is going on. What you need first is to locate the frequency. After locating the frequency or the frequencies, because sometimes you can have also some hopping. So the hopping happens, for example, for LoRa systems generally, and also other systems, like also you can see the mobile systems, for example, also. And after analyzing all the systems, you can, for example, do your captures and then analyze your capture, try to replay. The first attack, for example, if you for example, in a pen test, if you want, for example, a first vulnerability to just look at, to put in your pen test uh, reports, you can already try the replay attack. So you can, for example, try with a remote, you can open a door or close the door, and see if you, for example, if you just replay, you capture, you can close the door or open the door. And so like that, you can already say that there is like no anti-replay mechanism that will prevent from this kind of
Cool.
attack. And then you can continue
Hmm.
by studying the communication, the protocol, if there is an encryption, etc. If there is like an encryption or something as such, you will have you will have to pass through hardware analysis, like for example dumping the firmware and then dumping the key because maybe the keys are the same between two systems. So you can then, after having the key, you can try to decrypt the communication with the key you have dumped from one system and see if you can have like the clear text out of the communication. So yeah.
Huh. Okay. So, um, okay. So you'd mentioned encryption, poor encryption or bad encryption, or being
Mhm.
able to sidestep that encryption, and also key replay attacks. When you've been asked to go on site and they're like, "Oh, my medical telemetry systems are the best ever. We don't have any problems." What is the first thing you look at when you're uh, doing those kinds of tests? Is it whether or not the encryption is good, or do you threat model that and go, okay, I've seen systems like this before. You're using RC4 for encryption, so obviously that's crap because and what does a system test look like for somebody who's working an engagement like that?
Yeah, depends of the risk. I mean the risk of the. I mean it's only depends of the context. So if your client says that, for example, it's not risky, this kind of vulnerability is not risky, or it's not like something very terrific for them. I mean, I have to adapt also the test to avoid, like for example, wasting my time trying to exploit a vulnerability that will not be a problem for my clients. So
Mm-hmm.
and generally, clients always take care about the confidentiality and also the everything about not to impersonalize, for example, a command and something as such. But yeah, for example, DOS attack, generally people don't matter about it. It's
Mm.
like a DOS attack. It's like a common problem with radio. But actually, if you cannot do something like, for example, like jamming attack, for example, because it's exactly the same attack. Like for example, you just DOS communication in order to downgrade the communication to, I mean, a weaker system. For example, jamming attack, you can do that in mobile security when you want, for example, to trap a system to some sort of base station. You can, for example, jam the communication from 3G or 4G. So you can downgrade the communication to 2G. And so 2G, for example, doesn't have any mutual authentication. And so you can trap your system inside your evil of a rogue base station, sorry. And then you can sniff the communication. You can impersonate a device. You can impersonate everyone inside because it's exactly your base station, so you can do everything you want.
Right.
And so this is a kind of, the DOS attack, doesn't matter if you cannot, for example, do some kind of downgrade. So you can, for example, just degrade the security mechanism in order to attack the device.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So we've talked quite a bit this year, and I mentioned this before the podcast just to make sure that you knew. We talked to a company called JSOF in Israel who had worked on a custom TCP implementation from a company called Trek, which it's old, it's antiquated, it's not easy to patch.
Mhm.
Obviously, I would think with systems like this you have supply chain issues. So you're going in, you're going to talk to a car manufacturer who's got Bluetooth implementation, or you go in and you're talking to a building control system and they're like, oh yeah, we've got this cool product and whatever. Do you ever find the same types of OEM manufacturers like, oh yeah, you're using this I'm not saying that Raylink or Realtek have, vulnerabilities right now, but let's say, oh yeah, you're using this chipset. I already know that there's vulnerabilities in this chipset. Or what does analysis look like for you when you're doing this testing? Can you automatically go into a customer and go, yeah, you're using X, Y, and Z. There's going to be these things, or are you using this version of their cipher versus this version, or what software libraries are you using to make sure that you're not vulnerable? Because anything before 2015, I can just pop it like nothing. Or I mean, what does that look like for you when you tell them, hey, you're using something from 2014, probably should upgrade?
Yeah, when you, for example, when the client come with a system, generally I'm already curious about the system because I don't want to discover it, at the place. So sometimes I want also to prepare myself. So at the beginning, the client just give me, for example, the chipset or the technology he's using, and so I can also have like an idea of which type of vulnerability I can maybe try.
Mm.
Yeah, for example, some people can tell me that they're using LoRa. So the first question I will just ask to myself is if they use LoRa or LoRa one, for example, in order to see, for example, there will be like a custom communication that will be maybe broken already, or LoRa one, when maybe I will have to maybe brute force some keys, some weak keys, for example, because already in LoRa, for example, LoRa 1.0 and 1.1, there's like already some security, but still the security of LoRa 1.0, it's depends a little bit, but still it's kind of secure. It's more secure than having like a custom system, just on top of LoRa, just LoRa fee.
Hmm.
But yeah, generally, you when you used to test a lot of technology, you have like reflexes like that. So uh, when people just tell me that they're using, for example, Wi-Fi, generally when they use Wi-Fi, I'm just like always like I always expect that that will be like the not a custom Wi-Fi, for example. I would just like to try to see, okay, we will see about the encryption. Maybe it's used like, for example, the WPE or WPA Enterprise. And so with Enterprise, I can maybe try to just still hijack some challenges in order to crack them and try to see what I can do with that. Maybe join the domain, the Active Directory of the company just by cracking one of the challenge of someone. But yeah, I'm not. With the Wi-Fi generally. When people say that it's Wi-Fi, I'm expecting that it's like the common Wi-Fi, not a custom one. But sometimes I can be surprised about that. So yeah, sometimes you can be stuck about, okay, what is going on, because it's something that you don't understand at the first place. Also about you told about the Israel guys that found some sort of TCP vulnerability. I cannot remind this thing, but is it like some sort of serial to TCP, something as such, or I mean, not TCP over the air or serial over the air, something like that? What
From
is it?
from what I understood, it was a custom TCP implementation that was used on
Mhm.
embedded systems for its
Yeah,
lightweight use. It had been around since like the mid '80s, and had split off to a company that was in Japan that was using it on everything from toasters to cars and all that. And then there was a U.S. component. So he trying to track down all the companies that used it. I believe there was organizations like Schneider Electric and
yeah.
those. We mentioned that in the podcast, so I'm not disclosing anything that isn't out there, but yeah, it was a hot mess. So tracking down the people who are using that product, I think they're still tracking down everybody who's trying
Mm.
to use it, but it actually required them to go to some of the customers who are using these custom TCP implementations for Trek to talk about it a little bit. So
Was it using like a wireless communication in order
I'm
to
not
communicate or
sure.
not? Yeah.
The way that the gentleman made it sound, it was Shlomi
Okay.
Oberman was it wasn't necessarily wireless, but I guess it could be. Yeah, you mentioned LoRa right now. I've got some links in our show notes.
Mm.
Uh, Just looking at the Wikipedia page for LoRa, I did not realize that we had wireless in so many places. There's
Mm.
farming systems that are
Also, yeah.
using it, black rhino poaching protection in Tanzania, smart parking systems, smart fire alarms and detections, reindeer tracking in Finland, smart water monitoring. I mean, there's crazy
Mm.
things I would not have even thought of. Natural disaster prediction and sea turtle monitoring. I was like, holy cow, there's a lot. And then, of course, obviously, there's proprietary network stacks for LoRa, one called Dash 7 in this case, or
Mm.
something called Helium Systems, a proprietary protocol system based on similar technology. Do you do a lot of protocol analysis on these?
I
And
do
what
like a lot of protocol analysis. I mean, generally it's like a nightmare sometimes because sometimes it's documented, sometimes it's not. Sometimes you have to pay for documentation because it's like
right,
an ISO documentation to pay I mean to buy. And sometimes you buy your subscription to that and you don't have like the good documentation because the documentation is like too old and you cannot download it. So sometimes it's like hell. But you can always find someone who did the implementation at some points and just release some part of the implementation in GitHub sometimes. So if you are lucky, you can maybe find the protocol. I mean, for example, there was like a good exercise. It was like last year with the V2G systems. V2G system exactly use, for example, it is like the smart grid system. It allows, for example, for your car to be charged, smartly. And so, for example, you can charge and discharge a car, and everything then is managed by by the grids. And actually, it used like some sort of protocol called V2G, but the V2G also is used to communicate. It's using a channel. I mean, it's using, sorry, the power line communication transmission. So actually,
mm-hmm.
it's used like, exactly the same system as you use, for example, to extend your internet connection at home when you don't want to use the Wi-Fi because you want, for example, some quality of services at home,
Right.
and so you want to extend the internet at home like that with some plugs. And it's actually using the same technology as the plugs one, but using another standards that is more green because it consumes less energy. But still, if you, for example, you know that cars, for example, are just when you're charging your car, the car is charged with like a charger, but the charger is using, for example, an electrical network. And
Mm-hmm.
so, as a resident, for example, which is connected to the same electrical network, you can, for example, also talk to the car like that with inside your own residence if this residence is connected to the same electrical network. So actually, this is also the things I love is that I'm doing a lot of RF, but also there's like a lot of RF stuff that also happens, but not just in the air, but also inside electric lines. So and also the protocol is was kind of complicated because we had like to with my old colleague at the time we had to reverse engineer the world protocol. We didn't have any tools to work on the unplug green fee, also the V2G, and so we had to implement the unplug green fee, then the V2G, and also implement the encoders in order, because there was like also a use of an encoder in order to exchange information in a compressed way. So it will not like take a lot of space by transmitting the data between for example, the charger and the car. It was like some sort of a nightmare because we didn't sleep like for a week, and after a week we have success to do all the work. So because also our mission, which was a little bit limited uh, to just a week. So yeah.
Right.
Uh,
So you're reverse engineering protocols, which would require some protocol analysis. I'm automatically thinking Wireshark, but maybe that's not
Yeah,
some of the tools.
we do a lot of Wireshark first because some detector can be used. We do also some firmware analysis on that, but sometimes if we can, for example, find an implementation at some points, anything, any part of an implementation, any documentation, it's really helpful because really reversing a whole firmware, also an exotic firmware, like it is used, for example, for cars, like a nightmare to reverse. Also, now you have like the disassemblers today for this kind of architectures, but before at the time we were like completely lost. So we had to use every documentation, but we luckily we could find some implementation, some documentation, and so we could assemble everything and then directly reverse that this kind of communication like that. So yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, so you're teaching a class right now as we're recording this.
Yeah,
Some I looked at I don't know if it's the exact class, but you had an agenda on the classes, and you'd
yeah.
mentioned Faraday cages.
Mhm.
Why would you need to use a Faraday cage? And you mentioned in the class that there's a simple way of creating one. I'm assuming it's not a tinfoil hat on your head, and that's all obviously not going to shield you from having your brain waves stolen. But how does somebody make a Faraday cage on the cheap, and why would they need to make one?
Actually, the Faraday cage is like it's in fact it's simple, but also there are specialized company that does that because as for example, I don't want to make a Faraday cage because it's also time consuming. It requires also a lot of materials. So generally, you have to know that a Faraday cage is just a way to absorb the signal. It doesn't block the signal actually. So
Hmm.
your Faraday cage has to be as thin as it can, it can absorb a lot of a lot of it doesn't have to be too much thin. I mean, because if it's too much thin, for example, just like for example, an aluminum foil is not enough to absorb a lot of energy. And um, why we do that actually is that because at some point if we want to do our analysis, as a researcher, we don't want, for example, just first to broadcast the signal everywhere. So we will maybe produce a lot of noise everywhere, and also maybe it will be like a mess around for other devices. We want also to protect other devices from our attacks, so we can just attack
Right.
our target and not other devices around. Also, because of leaks, because we don't want, for example, if we have like a vulnerability, we don't want to leak
Oh, right.
the payload at some point. And also because if we want to analyze a device, we know that there's already the thermal noise that we will also take from when we want to do a capture, we will always have the thermal noise, but at least will not be like will not get all the noise around, and so we will be like a little bit isolated from all the devices that will produce a lot of noise, because at some points it's time consuming to isolate every signal. I mean to filter the other signal around in order to take the one that you are interested in. For example, if we want to work on Zigbee, Zigbee is using the 2.4 gigahertz, so it is the same as Wi-Fi. It is the same as other systems also. So a lot of systems use the ISM bands, as you said, for example. So it's like 433 megahertz, also it's like, sorry, 868 megahertz. You have also in US, you are using also the 300 megahertz, etc. And you have also the 3.4 that you can find everywhere. So actually, if you have to work on the 2.4 gigahertz, which is like pretty common everywhere. Every people work on that. I mean, every neighbor work with that frequency. Unless you are like in a lost island, it's like a nightmare to capture, like a decent capture of your targets that is using this exact frequency. So this is also why.
So it's a clean lab type environment thing. That makes sense.
Exactly. Also.
Okay. Okay. Um, yeah. Plus, I guess you don't want any. You you want to keep it clean, and any vulnerabilities you might find could be tampered with in regard to
Exactly, and
yeah.
also other people are using. Sorry for interrupting.
No, it's good.
The other people are also using the Faraday cage, just because I remember, because I'm not doing that exactly, but some people also are looking for some electromagnetic, leaks or something to search. So you're just trying to, for example, if like some key press, so some key are pressed or something like that, they want, for example, to identify if some sort of key has been pushed or not. And so you need like a perfect environment. I mean, a clean environment in order to make your first analysis, and then you can go real world. But first, you need to work on a clean environment because at first you don't know what you are looking for at the beginning.
Cool. Okay. So a lot of people, when they think wireless, they think, well, what's in my phone, 4 and 5G.
Mm.
You go to hacker summer camp and you see Twitter people saying, oh, I need to use a burner phone because there's things like stingrays out there and law enforcement's trying to, cause downgrade type attacks and what have you. With the deployment of the new cellular technology being 5G, has the wireless changed in any way? Is 4G and 5G so very different, or is it the same attacks that would work on a 3 or a 4G network also work on a 5G network?
It would be very complicated, for example, to intercept a communication in 5G. I mean, already in 4G, when you have like because you have like I have like I don't remember the word for that, but you have like carrier. Yes, sorry, you have like
Mm-hmm.
a carrier aggregation technique that allows, for example, for the 4G to use more carriers in order to exchange more information at the time, and so that is like very complicated to, for example, to jam. If you want to do some downgrade, because actually even with an SDR, I have developed a software that is called Moment Jam, which is supposed to be used with Moment Map in order to map the cells, and then you can jam some specific cells, and you will not jam, for example, all the cells that exist in the world. So it's like very you can use that with any SDR devices, but yeah, actually, already if you want to do some jamming on 4G, it's like kind of complicated because you have to jam on every channel at the time. You have to like to jam every band, and also it includes sometimes the GSM bands at some point. So you have also to look at which GSM bands you will not jam actually using a jammer for 4G is like also not. I mean, it's more complicated than 3G. In 3G, you can easily, like for example, downgrade the communication, but in 4G, for example, it's like just more complicated, so it requires more resources for that.
Mm.
But in 5G, you can imagine that actually the modulation also change a little bit, but also the techniques change in order to be faster than 4G. So yeah, it use more bands, so you have more bands also to jam, etc. So it's more complicated to do that. And also there is another problem for attacker just now is that for the moment there is no public tool in order to study the 5G. There is like already some open 5G interface. Uh, I mean development project, but it is not like very complete, very mature. So actually, if you want, for example, to choose the 5G, you will not be able to. You will not be able to do everything you want. But what you can do in 5G, for example, because we have like with some friends, we have done a challenge about that last year at Hulu during there was like a 5G cyber security CTF, and we won also this challenge. And so what we have done is that we have mainly work on the core of the 5G core, because the 5G core also use the cloud. This is also that change because in order to offer a lot of services at the time and don't have a lot of latencies, you will use mainly the cloud. And so we could, for example, figure out that at some point there was a lot of mistakes on the configuration of the services that were in the cloud. So we could, for example, we could just see that there was like no for this purpose of this the CTF, we could, for example, see that there was like a problem of isolation of the devices. So this is exactly the same problem that you can encounter, for example, for IoT systems. So IoT system, when you use the same USIM cards that is used, for example, by the car or any other IoT system, you can just put the SIM card in your phone and then tether the communication in order to get an IP address. And then when you get an IP address, you do exactly the same thing as a network security does. Is that you do your Nmap, you're also looking for with Wireshark, you're looking for some strange broadcast over the network also. So yeah, you're trying to look at any possible services that can be interesting. And so you can, for example, locate some services like Tomcat, etc., or some services that gives you maybe an RC, like a remote command execution, or you can maybe find like a system that is also vulnerable to any other vulnerability. So yeah.
Okay. All right, cool. So we have about 10 minutes left. I want to make sure
Mm.
you can, go back. I'm sure you've got
Thank you very
thousands of
much.
questions from your students and whatever. So I have one other question. So let's say I'm listening to this podcast and I'm a wireless manufacturer. I create, wireless systems, and, I'm freaked out now by everything you've just said. And I'm like, oh my God, what do I do? What are some things that I could go back to my organization as a wireless device manufacturer or protocol manufacturer and or custom TCP, like the Dash 7 folks? If what could I do to keep you a bit more challenged on the next engagement? It's like, oh no, they're now doing this. Oh my God, so what could I do as an organization to increase my security?
Increase the security, generally using a good encryption and also not using the same keys for every device is already something that can block me a lot. But also maybe I can figure out maybe other ways, for example, by just like, for example, is trying to downgrade the communication or
Right.
downgrade the security. If your device allows, for example, me to downgrade the security mechanism because of some problem with the communication, that will allows me to sorry that will allow me to attack it. But you have to think about any situation when, for example, the communication isn't great. If there is like a downgrade, a fallback as a mechanism, this fallback mechanism also has to be secure in order to block me. But yeah, generally, when we are what you have to know is that using wireless is that at least wireless communication are invisible. As someone that doesn't have, like, for example, an SDR, as I have, like, for example, I have like plenty of SDR here
Mm-hmm.
around. But for someone who is not aware about that, he sees the wireless communication as something invisible. But for someone who has, a lot of equipment, he can already like sniff the communication, capture the communication, see if there is like an encryption. If there is no encryption, is like, you can do a lot of things. So you have to know that using wireless communication is not hidden, even if it's like a custom protocol. You have to think about the confidentiality of the messages. It's mainly that will block me. As soon as you have like some confidentiality and the keys are pretty strong, and also it uses like a pretty strong algorithm, encryption algorithm, for me, it will block me a lot. For example, LoRa at some points can be very blocking because, for example, if you use like LoRa 1.1 and a good key, I mean, if you use, for example, the OTA mod in order to generate some uh, some some keys derivated from the keys that are put on devices, it will be very, very complex for me to decrypt the communication. It will be like kind of impossible for me to decrypt the communication because if the keys are pretty strong, it will take me a lot of time to decrypt just one packet. And I know that there are also some other keys that are generated thereafter. So as there are like a lot of derivation on keys, it will be time consuming and complex for me to do something about that now. Maybe after some month, or maybe after some year, I can decrypt that, but it will be like obsolete for me. So
Nice.
at least the encryption will be like strong. I can maybe decrypt it at some times, but then this information will be completely obsolete. So the encryption is also about that, about making obsolete some information that just after when you will you will be able to decrypt it. So yeah,
Okay.
you have to think about that.
Awesome. Yeah. So, we have a couple minutes here. I'd like you to sell your training. Let's say you've got some training coming up in November or December. It sounds like people learn a lot when they attend this training. Just from the questions I've learned here, I've learned a lot myself. But do you have any future trainings coming up that people might be able to go to in say the November timeframe? End of November.
I'm doing a training on advanced security trainings. It is organized by Dmitry Nedospazov and also Thomas Roth. So it is a training that I'm doing on November and also December. So in November, I will mainly show how to use GNU Radio and do your own tools to hack some devices. On December, it will be mainly on the mobile security. So I'll show how to, for example, hack some mobile stuff, how also to find vulnerability on mobile stacks, because also you can do interception, but you can also find some, for example, some corruption, memory corruption on phones. So sometimes it's also good to hack some baseband on phones. And then I'm doing normally, if everything is well, at next Hardware I/O in I don't remember the date, maybe in March or April. I don't remember, but the next Hardware I/O, I will also do 3 days. So it will be more generic than advanced security training, because advanced security training is like you can choose your topic. For example, if you want, for example, just an introduction on radio, I can do like 2 days of introduction. Then there are like 3 dedicated dates to develop some tools to understand about how to use GNU Radio and so on. And also 2 days or 3 about mobile security. So be focused on some specific topics. But also in next year in Black Hat, maybe Black Hat USA. This year I couldn't for example do the Black Hat in UK because I had I had a collision with another training, but maybe next time I will be also able to do that.
Okay. And you announce your trainings on your Twitter, which looks like FIUX.
It's you can use the Twitter of Pentests, the name of the company. It's like it's like pen test, but you just change the end with hertz, like HERTZ.
Yep.
Exactly.
It's in our show notes. I'll be following that one right now. And I'll put Sebastian's will also be in there if you want to reach out to him. Sounds like people will learn a lot for their money. It might be worth it if you're just being more than an enthusiast. So, Sebastian, I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you very much also for the invitation. It was much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Cool. And I'll let you get back to your class.
Thank you.
Cool. All right. And that was part 1 of our show with Christopher Hadnagy this week. We'll be back with part 2 of our interview with him in a couple weeks. So before I go, just want to mention you can follow us on Twitter. You can follow Mr. Boettcher at Boettcherpwned, BOETTCHERPWNED. You can follow Ms. Berlin at InfoSyster, INFOSYSTIR. You can follow me. I'm Brian Brake, BRYANBRAKE. And our official podcast Twitter is at Brakesec, BRAKESEC. I'd like to thank our patrons. Donations that they give us every month go for hardware upgrades, hosting of the podcast on Libsyn, and our Zoom web conference accounts, among other things. And if you're interested in getting a t-shirt or whatever, you can feel free to hit up our TPub store, which is found at the shortened link, which will take you directly to TPub, is https://brakesec.com/store. And please feel free to check us out on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Please leave feedback when you can. It gives us more visibility and allows people to find us more easily. All the other places where you can find us, iTunes, iHeartRadio, and those other places, Spotify, for instance, You can find them on our website at breakingsecurity.com. We'll be back next week with another episode of Breaking Down Security. Have a great week. Please be nice to one another, and we will talk to you again soon. And we're done. Cool. All right. That was awesome. I did not know what to expect coming in. I like I said, I just scratched the surface with regards to Googling stuff. But yeah, that it sounds like that wireless is a hot mess, just like any other embedded system. So I had no idea things like Rhino monitoring and sea turtle monitoring and agricultural systems were using all this. So that's amazing. So. The reason I asked for November is because we do have a couple of shows in the can right now that we're going to have to put out, including one on election security this weekend. So this is probably going to go out around the 21st of November, like the weekend of the 21st, if that's all right. One reason I did ask about trainings in late November, but cool. So yeah, I'm going to let you go because you've got like 4 minutes. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you very much.
And have a great rest of your weekend.
Have a great day. Also a great weekend. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.